It's not often we get this much time with the county attorney, but we are thankful for it. Rachel Mitchell is joining us. Let's start off with that. Thank you. I appreciate all this time.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
The threats against the schools, I've used this analogy with people. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a big push in airports that it's not funny. You don't joke about hijacking. You don't joke about bombs and guns. And I actually had a family member that did it and got hauled into a room and interviewed by the FBI for 2 hours, and everybody knew it was just a joke. I mean, you could see the eye rolling that it was a joke, but it's such a serious offense that everyone had to be taken seriously. Is that a fair analogy to what's going on now with these school threats?
In some cases, I think it is. We know that there was one recently that we charged that said that they did it on a dare. So I would, say that was similar.
And I know there's two different things that are at work here, and I want to start with the one where it is young people and it is a prank and it's something that they think is funny or whatever it is. What do you say to those parents and what do you say to those kids? What rude awakening is waiting for them if they do this?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember that time back in the 70s because my parents sat me down and talked to me before we were going on a trip. And what I would say to the parents here is the same thing. You need to sit your kids down and have a very, very serious conversation with them that this is not a joke. And, if you're in a situation where you're law enforcement or you're prosecutor like I am, whose side do you think we have to err on? We have to take it very seriously.
And there's a bunch of things that work. First of all, it sends the police into an all-out push because this is the most serious crime. We've seen it happen around the country, so you know how devastating these can be when there is a school shooting or something like that. And then it diverts those resources. At a minimum, it's the diversion of those resources for a lot of time.
Right. Well, I mean, it's shutting down the school, so the day is gone. You have kids now that are afraid to go back to school, so that's hampering their education. And then you have already thinly stretched police officers who have to be at the school, and they're not patrolling the rest of the city. And so it leaves other people vulnerable. So it's a huge issue.
So what is the potential punishment for this? I'm sure it's wide-ranging, but what could happen to a young person, even though they're a juvenile, if they do this?
Well, the two most likely things that they're to be charged with are making terrorist threats, which is a Class 3 felony. So as you know, felonies are 1 to 6. 1's the most serious. So 3 is a very serious felony. And the other is interfering with education institutions, which is a Class 6 felony.
So is there a difference in how you handle is there a difference in punishments for the crime of somebody that's making a real threat and you thwarted an attack versus I was just joking and it was a dare?
Hopefully once the charges are filed, we can get information in that lets us tell the difference between those two. But, yes, if we see that one was a serious threat, we're going to handle that differently than the ones that is a dare, but they're still going to be prosecuted.
Yeah, there was a case recently, I'm sure you saw it in Florida, where the sheriff actually perp walked an 11-year-old because not only did they verify the threats, they found an arsenal from this kid, and it was a serious threat. And I think the quote from the sheriff was, if you're not going to raise your kids, we will, and that they were going to make sure that they were exposed. Is that something you think that is a diversion to this, that if there is some kind of, I know they're kids, but if they are publicly, if their names or likeness is shown, is that a diversion?
I think that caught a lot of people's attention to see an 11-year-old perp walked. I don't know that that's, necessarily the best way to handle it, but it's anything that's going to get parents to sit down and talk to their kids is important.
So I think that's a great question. By the way, Rachel Mitchell is joining us. She's the Maricopa County attorney. How you get the message to kids, is there a responsibility in your office, if not your office, with the police departments, the sheriff's office, and the cities in Maricopa County to message to young people what they're up against, that they shouldn't do this? Or do you think this is something that's better left for the parents to deal with?
Well, I think it's best left to the parents to deal with, but it's up to us to tell the parents you need to deal with it. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is a threats forum so that parents can be educated on talking to their kids. I think parents are afraid to bring it up because they don't want to put ideas in their kids' heads. And what I can say is you're not likely to do that, but you are likely to stop something if they're thinking about doing something as a prank or as a dare.
Yeah, and the message, I think for a lot of parents is they would say, well, he was just joking or she was just joking. But when they see what the kids are facing, when they're going to go have to walk into a courtroom, then the parents are going to realize maybe we should have done something about this ahead of time.
Exactly. Even a joke leads to a full-out law enforcement response. It does cause fear in other students and teachers. So it does have an impact. Just because it's a joke doesn't mean it doesn't.
And maybe I'm asking for your opinion, or maybe there is already punishment where the parents are on the hook to pay for the cost of law enforcement for that amount of time, a reimbursement or some kind of a fine levied where parents realize the seriousness of this and recouping some of the cost of deploying all those officers and assets.
Every case that we're looking at are the parents in a situation that we can hold them liable for what has happened. Did they know? Did they have warning, etc.?
Very quickly, we know that what happened at Chaparral High School was a call from outside of the U.S., but the scary part was technology made it look as if that call was being made from the campus. Mm-hmm. How do you fight against that?
Yeah, it's really hard when it's from out there. If we can get them, if we can prove who did it, we can prosecute them here. But the issue is finding them and, finding out specifically who did it.
And their ability to use technology to make it appear as if they're somewhere they're not.
Yeah, very frightening.
Yeah, it is. I want to, before we run out of time, the project that was kind of a nationwide project to focus on violent offenders and repeat offenders has elicited a lot of arrests across the country, including here in Maricopa County. Can you let us in on, I know there's a press conference today about it. Can you tell us anything about this operation?
Yeah, this was an operation, federal and state or local authorities to focus on people who are dangerous, people who commit gun crimes, sex crimes, other violent crimes. And so it's to round them up and focused on really the worst of the worst. And so they were very successful in doing that.
And so now it's in your office. Let's say these arrests are made. So how do you handle those cases when you look at it, when your lawyers in an office look at this and you're looking at someone's violent past? How much does that play a role in what happens to them next?
It plays a big role. I mean, we have to prioritize resources just like everybody else does. And so when it's somebody who is a violent or repetitive offender, then that person gets priority attention.
And when it comes to sentencing, I know that that's out of your hands. That's the judge that deals with that. The judges, how are they doing it? If you see someone that's done the same thing 3 or 4 times, you've got to throw the book at them, right?
Yeah, the judges have a whole pre-sentencing report that they look at, but it's also incumbent upon my attorneys to point out those things to make sure that the judge is aware of just how serious an offender this person is.
And do you have enhanced bail or for someone that is a repeat offender?
Yeah, we staff the bail court 24 hours a day. And so we have their records when we're asking for a bail amount. We point that out to the judge there as well.
I appreciate the time this morning. It flies by, but it's a big 30 minutes for us. Thanks for your time.
Sure, absolutely. Anytime.
Right. Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.